Effectively securing your organization and its reputation requires a smarter approach. To maximize efficiency and minimize risk, security experts turn to Logarithm, the only leading solution built solely for security teams by a security team committed to your success. With next-gen SIEM, user and entity behavior analytics, network traffic and behavior analysis, security automation and orchestration, and compliance, Logarithm provides security made smarter. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved is unprotected attack paths that allow threats to compromise vulnerable targets in the cloud and data center. But traditional microsegmentation is too complex and time-consuming. There's a better approach: Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation, delivering results immediately with a security outcome that's provable and management that's zero touch. Driven by machine learning, Edgewise automatically builds policies that protect any application in any cloud without any changes to your network. They provide measurable improvement by quantifying attack path risk reduction and verifying software identity before it communicates to stop application compromises and data breaches. To see how to eliminate your network attack surface, visit securityweekly.com/Edgewise. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. We are currently running our annual listener feedback survey. Visit securityweekly.com, click the survey tab or the survey link menu option at the top. 2019 listener survey is there. Submit your responses so we can collect your feedback to shape the network here at Security Weekly. Also, don't forget to attend the RSA conference in 2020, February 24th through the 28th. Join thousands of security professionals, forward-thinking innovators, and solution providers for 5 days of actionable learning, inspiring conversation, and breakthrough ideas. Register before January 24th and save $900 on a full conference pass. Save an extra $150 by going to securityweekly.com/RSAC 2020 and use the code to register. Alrighty. We are now upon the security news.
The security nudes.
Security news. Yes.
So before we get too far,
you don't want to talk about my twinkly Christmas tree yet?
I do, and because your story number one, because there are some things in there like ESP 8266 that are like really drawing.
Speaking your language, right?
Yeah, like totally speaking my language. But there was one story that Tyler pointed out that we picked up on right before coming to the class, which is yours. Coming to the show, which is your story number 4. The Russian police raid Nginx Moscow office.
It's craziness, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
apparently,
there's so many crazy pieces to this.
I don't remember all the names, largely because they were Russian names, or the names of the companies, because those were, except for Nginx, those were Russian too. At least one of them was. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the person that wrote Nginx was Russian and worked for a Russian company, not Nginx, wrote Nginx, and they were like, someone came into his cubicle one day and they were like, I won't do my Russian accent because it's really bad. They were like, hey, that's cool. We should use that and then go drink vodka and stuff. And he was like, yeah, sure.
Like totally. I wrote this on my own spare time, but the company can totally use it because it's open source.
Right. And then left that company and co-founded Nginx.
Yeah, the Nginx company to do support and add-on and so forth.
Right. And now they have commercial offerings, but Nginx is still largely, of course, open source.
Right.
And surpassed Apache as the most popular web server.
Which is amazing. This is where it becomes interesting in that Nginx is the world's...
I want to say the article said, and it was like a little detail in there, that the original company that he worked for, where he developed Nginx in his spare time, made it open source, they transferred it or hired, or it sounds like hired another company to go get ninja lawyers to go after the original dude that wrote it.
Yep.
and sue him. But apparently in Russia, if you're in copyright violation, you get arrested. Like in the U.S., that's, you get a letter and you got to get lawyers and stuff like that. And in Russia, apparently you're detained or arrested, is what it sounded like.
Well,
you will be re-educated.
I mean, you think about Tetris. The name escapes me because I was reading this story not that long ago. The guy that created Tetris, was a Russian computer scientist, to the best of my knowledge. And somebody's screaming at me right now through their car radio or whichever. But he was a Russian computer scientist, and because of their culture, he had developed Tetris, and it was a Russian state-owned thing. And he really couldn't commercialize on it until they were willing to relinquish control of his intellectual property that was state-owned to him. And he really missed out on the biggest portion of the money-making initial licensing of that because the Russian government.
All right. So
now, mind
the
you,
developer,
this was back in like 2000, right? Like 2000, 2004.
Yeah. So
Nginx happened.
Igor is the person who wrote Nginx while he was working for Rambler.
Yep.
Was the original in the early 2000s. Tyler,
you're not even going to try the last name, Paul?
Nope. Not even going to try the last name.
Sysovid.
What you guys said. And apparently this was public knowledge, right? That was the other thing from the article. Like in 2012, Igor was like, hey, I developed Nginx while I was working for Rambler, and that was cool, right?
So Nginx is a U.S. company too, by the way.
Yes, it is, because he left Russia and went to, San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and now Nginx acquired...
they're owned by F5.
Yeah, they're owned by F5. So F5 Networks acquired Nginx for $670 million. So now dollar signs are lighting up in people's eyes, basically.
Yep. And that wasn't a new thing. That's been...
Yeah. Yes. I don't know when...
and I'm sure F5 has some good lawyers that have looked at all this, and, even between statute of limitation, out-of-country intellectual property issues.
Right. Because you're not dealing with U.S. Intellectual property laws. You're dealing with Russian intellectual property laws.
Yep. So again, I think all this is just a ploy to gain access, perhaps, to whatever code was on the servers, because as part of this, the warrant, or however they do it in Russia, they acquired or seized all the servers and computers for a good portion of the headquarters there in Russia. So what source code were they after, and what particular piece of code, and what's the alternative game?
So your conspiracy theory, Tyler, is they seized all of this to put a backdoor in Nginx so the Russians can spy on everyone running Nginx?
I was thinking maybe more they were looking for code.
Or as the most popular
were having
web server
a
on the
good
planet.
conversation.
Sorry. I like conspiracy
having source code to a lot of whatever was on those servers inside of Nginx. And again, Nginx is open source. The Nginx additional stacks and applications, those are not open source, and those are obviously probably, when you have 38% of the industry market for web servers, that means a good portion of that 38% has the Nginx additional things, the things that are commercial, running on top of them. Right?
And the fact that F5 paid $670 million for Nginx means they've racked up quite some revenue and a lot of customers that are running the commercial software.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here thinking, follow the money. This feels like a financial ploy, not a backdoor ploy at all.
You think there's financial gain though if they simply could seize, because it's a U.S. company, because it's global, and F5 now owns it, the fact that they seized only the Russian portion of that screams they want something that is within inside of source code that's a very specific need. I guess from the spooky side of things, that's how I would look at it.
I wouldn't see that they seized the Russian part of that. I would say that they seized the resources of the company that were available to them in country, which also happened to be some fairly high-level folks within the company.
You're going to tell me that the creator of that doesn't have full insight into a lot of the Git repositories or the code or how things are being developed or ran. Like that's
Yep, and or
Yeah, his local branch is on his computer that they seized. Guaranteed.
they're breaking his elbow right now for his PGP keys and whatever else.
So
I just want to complain that Google Translator is limited on the number of characters because I'm trying to read the Russian language news reports on this, and I have to chop it up in pieces. It's very annoying.
Google Lens works really well for that. Just a tidbit.
Yep. So what they said that they seized, they arrested some specific folks there in the Russian office, and one of them was a fairly.
One was the guy we were just talking about.
Was it
Igor?
Was it Igor?
Igor did, but there's a couple others as well.
And somebody named Maxim.
He was one of the co-founders from one of the original pieces, if I remember right.
But they've been released, but their phones were confiscated. That was from.
Well, I mean, you need that. You need the two-factor authentication, right?
Tyler's all about the conspiracy theory. I love it. I love it.
It makes sense now.
Dude, it's not a conspiracy theory if they're really out to get you.
They're freaking Russian, man. They're all out there to get you.
This Tyler's argument.
Wait.
Tyler's whole argument on the conspiracy theory is, hello, they're Russian.
Hey, Tyler, just because they're Russian doesn't mean they're all out to get you, because some of them are Ukrainian.
They're out to rig the election again. All right, that's what.
They won't claim to be Russian.
all I will say, Tyler, Zlata.
I love Zlata.
Yeah, she's not out to get you.
So around that election
But
piece,
is she?
You don't know. That's the thing. They're Russian, right?
Right.
Love you, Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. So again, like with the elections coming up, and a lot of the conspiracy theories aside, and a lot of the security ramifications of the elections and tampering,
and the current
disinformation, right?
And the current impeachment process.
Yes. So what is there? Is there something within inside of certain election campaigns, election software, election servers that maybe NGINX is using, housing, facilitating?
Well, I'd argue that
more conspiracy theories. I love it.
So
Bert Kreischer's "I Am the Machine" skit. I think it was also an Igor, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was it Igor? It was Igor, right?
So
I think they were looking for Hillary's email server personally.
Yeah, Tyler, with that, the election stuff is so old they probably still run Apache or IIS.
Good possibility, but you gotta be lightweight now, right? And everybody's trying to update so that it's more secure. And a lot of these states and counties are adopting a lot of the new platforms so that they're not the ones that are Florida in the news with punch ballots,
the hanging Chad, right?
Oh. And so it makes you wonder, like, with this, is there something there? Again, I have no idea.
Tyler,
inside knowledge.
I'm the machine. I'm the machine.
I'm the machine.
So the tweet from Leonid Volkov which had the search warrant on it basically says a search of the office of NGINX, one of the most, or even the most successful in the world, market purely Russian IT companies. They say 15 years ago, Igor Sisov had developed NGINX during working hours, being an employee of Rambler. Statute of limitations did not hear. Well, in general, complete nonsense. In other words, he's saying that they're basing it on the fact he didn't do it on his own time. He was doing it on Rambler's time, and therefore Rambler's entitled.
That's intellectual property.
15 years ago, like how do you prove that?
But the big how does that statute of limitations apply under Russian law?
Yeah, that's
whatever we want, comrade.
Right? Exactly. What would you like the statute of limitations to be for this arrest?
Today. Yes.
I want to talk about twinkly Christmas trees.
Yes.
Because they're very twinkly. I bought a twinkly because my wife was like, look, we're gonna get a new tree.
Yep.
And this year it's gonna be a fake tree because she's like, last year the real tree was falling over like a lot, and it was a nightmare. And then all the pine needles were falling off, and which was great because I didn't have to. It was really like the scene from the Chevy Chase movie.
Yeah.
What is the Christmas movie?
Christmas Vacation.
Christmas Vacation. Thank you.
Vacation, yeah.
Where they're charging through the snow and he's cutting down the tree. Right. That was how we got like our tree. And so I was like, all right, I'm cool with skipping that tradition this year and getting a fake tree. I'm like, but we got to get the Wi-Fi tree. She's like, really? Like, does everything need? I'm like, it's for research purposes, okay?
And then you could write it off. Although my tax accountant said I want to get the refrigerator with the Android tablet built in for research purposes. And he says, no, it's a fucking refrigerator. Like,
you, my friend, need a new accountant.
No, my accountant's really good, but he will. He's the one that's going to be taking the fall for getting audited. So
you need an accountant named Igor. That's anyway.
I am the machine.
So I bought one of these twinkly Christmas trees. From LED Works, apparently is the company. And admittedly, I've not had time to research it. I messed around with the app and I can change colors and it blinks to music and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And all that. But apparently there's 2 different versions out there. Now, what's interesting is that Pentest Partners did the original research on the original Christmas tree.
Right.
And they're basically like, it is very insecure, and published the report. Now, LED Works listened because the new version of the Christmas tree released in 2019 replaced the ESP8266 module,
which is the Pentest Partners
original report was based on the vulnerabilities in ESP8266. Sounds like you're familiar with this chipset, Larry.
I am.
Replaced with a slightly more secure ESP32, which researchers mentioned in the public research about the security of the lights last year that was a better option. This company listened and said, someone said our shit was vulnerable, so this year, hey, they said this one was was better security, so we're going to use this chip. To me, this is a ray of hope, pun intended.
This is a freaking Christmas tree company.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah,
it's
but
a Christmas miracle. They listened. They went with the more secure chip.
Now, how many organizations put up a holiday tree in their lobby, and it could be Wi-Fi, and it could be.
My life was not complete without my Christmas tree on the net. Come on.
Now that said, knowing the and not knowing all of the details between the 8266 and the 32. What security features did the 32 add over the 8266 that wasn't an implementation problem? That I don't know.
Good question.
I'm going to have to go read these reports because my understanding is the 8266 can be used in a very secure manner if configured properly as a wireless client.
Pentest Partners called the ESP8266 a bit of fail for IoT.
Really?
Yeah. So included the fact the waterproof control module outdoor laser makes me suspicious, but there was a line in here that was really good that summarized the issues. They attached logic probes and could recover the Wi-Fi pre-shared key from the system. So, when Santa comes down the chimney and attaches logic probes to my Christmas tree he gets my PSK.
Fair enough.
Well,
fair
enough. You get his Bluetooth beaconing, and you can then
track him,
or any of his Wi-Fi probes and Bluetooth beaconing and BLE beaconing,
but you know where he's going, so it doesn't matter.
Do you really want to find Santa off season? I mean, really?
Hey, kids. Yep.
How does he charge up for that trip?
Hookers and blow.
I just think that this is positive. This is a vendor that listened and said, right?
I agree.
Right. That was my whole point on the article. And I have not read the research either, but now I'm really curious about these modules and the differences between the 2 chips, Larry.
And absolutely. And we talk about these sort of enabling IoT type of things in our home. And I was talking with you about that Philips acquired apparently Wiz, or the Wiz technology within their light bulbs, and they have this new series of light bulbs.
If someone steals that from your house, do they take a Wiz?
Maybe.
Absolutely.
But, and those are the jokes we were making last week, but these bulbs are
Which I still find funny, by the way, even though nobody else does.
I find it hilarious. So they have these bulbs from Philips now that are Wiz enabled, so that you can...
It's just a really horrible name.
So you can whiz on the but they're not quite Hue in that the LEDs are not as vibrant on some of the colors, but they're still really cool. They're Wi-Fi connected, and as opposed to Zigbee with the Philips Hue stuff, and they were on sale at Home Depot, and I bought a bunch of them. And actually,
do they mesh to get like the Philips Hue will mesh, like if one of the bulbs is out of range in Hue, it'll
mesh with Zigbee.
It'll mesh with the other bulbs that in closest proximity over Zigbee, right?
Over Zigbee. These do not. They're all Wi-Fi. And first world problems, right? I bought a bunch of these bulbs and I started installing them in our can lights in our living room and our kitchen. And I couldn't get these 3 lights in our kitchen to freaking join the network. I'm like, okay, well, this one had like some scratches on it and the box was a little damaged, so I'll move to the next one. And I couldn't get that next one and the next one after that working. I'm like, what the F? Well, turns out that separate segment from all of my IoT devices only had 60 IPs assigned to the DHCP pool, and I had exhausted the DHCP pool.
I thought you were going to say, like with Philips Hue.
First world problems.
First world problems, right? Your IoT DHCP pool is exhausted at 60 IPs.
It's interesting if it's new, you can discover it. If it's been assigned to a hub in the past, you can get it to reassigned to your hub through your app by just reading the serial number off the bulb. Which I imagine you could probably sniff out of the air and cause potentially.
It's probably used as a network key, or depending on the profile, it is used as like a deploy key. For the serial number. So you probably wouldn't be able to sniff it out of the air.
Gotcha.
It is probably
that was my theory. Is like all I need to. I mean, I can physically look at it, right? But I'm like, could you somehow obtain it from the bulb remotely to get it? Because that's the only piece of data in authentication you need to basically tell that bulb, hey, join my hub, not someone else's hub, right?
So these, you can get them to join different networks by going into discovery mode. You can do manual discovery and automatic discovery. And you do so by the first time you turn it on and it's new, it goes into a discovery mode.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to flick the light switch.
Yeah.
Twice. Duke.
What?
And it goes into discovery mode, and then it goes into like super fail-safe mode if you do it 3 times in succession.
Now, if you've got Wi-Fi switches,
that's with kids, right?
Yeah, but if you've got Wi-Fi switches in your wall,
like to flip the switches.
Yep.
So what I decided to do was do Wi-Fi switches in the wall, so that my next project over break is coding the automation in some platform that when I issue voice commands, that will check the state of the wall switch, make sure it's on, then send the commands to the Hue system to either turn the bulbs on or off and or set the color and or brightness.
So currently we have a solution to that. We do not have Wi-Fi switches. We just have
so
regular
you have
switches.
Electrical tape over your...
Yeah, we just have tape.
I have some of that, dude.
Actually, we don't have the tape on it yet. We just tell the kids, if you want to turn the lights on, you say, Alexa, do this. Never mind.
So my only barrier on going to the automated switches is they don't come in light almond. I know it's a first world problem, but I want them to match the rest of the stuff in the house.
Yeah, and see, Lee, for me, they don't come in that standard paddle. They're all the Decora stuff.
Oh, yeah, so that wouldn't match either.
Right, so we have all the standard little paddle things as not the Decora stuff throughout the house. So then I have to change wall plates, and I have to get the wall plates that have the right amount of thing, and then if I'm doing not a wholesale, I'm doing partial.
Yeah. Bless you.
Yeah, I mean, the way you fix that problem is you just build a whole new house. So you can have all switches.
We just did that. We just did that. Or more importantly, you know what you do? You wait 2 years and you move all the way across the country and you buy a new house.
There you go.
Why do you have to move across the country?
Because you want to.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, by the way, just in case you missed it, when you go to the Philips site, they mention their Wiz connected bulbs.
Yep.
So they're way ahead of us, guys.
Yep. When I was young and had no sense, I took a Wiz on an electric fence.
Oh, don't do that.
Hurt so bad when I shocked my balls, I took a dump in my overalls.
Wow.
If only you could make that a haiku.
So along the lines of IoT, there was an article that was based on a survey. I'm not sure who the survey was from. It was 1,000 consumers on connected devices stay ahead of the CES 2020 conference, which happens the beginning of every year.
Which story is this of yours,
What
Paul?
story number are you?
I am now
6?
on story number 6.
Okay.
And this article claims very boldly that consumers take IoT security seriously. They say 87% of the respondents said they believe connected device manufacturers should be responsible for securing products from hacks. Note that doesn't say they will base their purchasing
That's
decisions.
not taking it seriously. That's saying they expect it to be secure.
Right.
Yeah, that's general
Right.
common
They don't want to
sense.
think about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to think about it.
Well, that and like, who was the poll for? Like, are we talking like security spouses, like security community, IT community? Like, there's a big difference between.
KarambaSecurity.com published this particular survey, and there's a link
Did
to
you
it.
say Columbo, like the 1980s?
No, not Colombo.
Oh,
This was
KARAMBA.
Thank you. And they report consumer attitude toward IoT security. But I still also think that when you are filling out a survey, you'll be like, yes, I want my IoT devices to be secure. Now, when you're shopping online on Amazon or Best Buy or wherever, or you're in a store, and the Chinese version of the device you're trying to buy is 75% cheaper than all of the other options, you're probably, as a consumer, not one of us in security, right, going to pick what's cheaper. And in fact, some of us in security may go, hey, I need 10 of these, 20 of these. Maybe I'll go with the Chinese version.
Yep, maybe I'll go with the Wiz version.
Maybe I'll take a Wiz
Yep.
instead of a Hue.
Yep.
That sounds really weird when I verbalize that.
So many jokes. So
When it's a
sounded
small
better in my
delta, I
head.
don't think consumers will go if it's a small delta, I think they'll go buy American. But when it's a 75% or a 90% delta, it's really hard to argue with that.
Oh, yeah, it is. Huge. Huge.
But, I mean, how many times have we gone basically the Chinese option, right? I mean, you know, I'm an audiophile and I love audio gear. And I tell you what, the stuff coming out of China, that's a fraction of the price. So $185 versus $1,000 for a pair of earbuds, right? You're hard pressed to find the difference in my testing so far, to be quite honest with you.
Yep, exactly.
especially when you know that technology may or may not have been stolen and or copied, at least fairly close to the original.
Yep.
Right.
Same sort of thing that for the keynote that Mike and I are delivering at Way West Wild Hackin' Fest. That was my thing about ordering hardware today. Like, I know that there is a device that does exactly what I want, and I can figure it.
But for my testing, I need 15 of them,
and they're $50 a piece, and I need 9 of them for our initial proof of concept, and they're $50 a piece. But if I buy them on eBay that are allegedly genuine, they're $22 a piece. Now, that said, I'm buying them in 1s or 2s or 9s from the manufacturer, which doesn't offer me any discount. These companies are buying them in bulk by tens or hundreds of thousands and are getting a bulk discount for that, so that I can justify that cost difference. But still, is it the real one or are they fake? My answer is I don't care as long as they can configure them the way I want them to, and these devices I can split out the receive of what they're intended to be received into their individual constituents. Like
But if you filled out a survey, you'd be like, hey, I want my IoT devices to be secure.
Of course.
Of course you would.
Yeah, I do. I want them to be secure whether I get them from a U.S. company or a Chinese company. Especially if they're copying them, copy the secureness.
Well, it's a good point. Like, how does the consumer know what they're buying is secure or not?
I mean, if
The
they don't
good
know, how are they
housekeeping
gonna vote
seal
with
of
their wallet?
approval.
Oh, a testing lab. That'd work.
Oh,
It's cheaper.
Cyber UL? What?
True, but I mean, how many consumers actually look at the UL, never mind cyber UL certification?
Let's put it this way. I don't think anybody looks at UL certification on those little tags anymore because it has become so ubiquitous that everything that we buy in the U.S., you go into a big box store, everything is UL certified. But when you buy it off the internet, maybe not. So they don't even think about that anymore. There's
companies besides Underwater's Labs that do those certifications?
There certainly are. But
it's what the generic term is, authorities having jurisdiction that do the certification, and there are actually quite a few of them. I never knew this until I got involved with an app that was checking that and recording it for devices we were buying at work.
Huh.
I thought it was only UL. And I don't think anybody looks at it as a consumer. I don't think anybody pays attention to that anymore.
I
The
cut
sticker's there, they don't see it.
I cut those tags off because they get in my way.
And what if you put a certification sticker on an outside of an IoT box with all the other advertising stickers? Are people really going to see it?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say what consumers pay attention to and don't. I mean, Lee and I both have more stories now on IoT because the holidays are upon us, and media likes to point out where there are flaws, maybe for the greater good, and it could be influential. Who knows? But Ring had Ring. So attackers are going after Ring devices with basically either password spraying and/or password guessing.
No, credential stuffing.
Credential stuffing. Thank you.
And this is one of those things that's near and dear to my heart this week. In Guardian's newsletter this week was on credential stuffing, which we did because of Disney Plus service release.
Yeah, sure.
Because Disney Plus service got totally compromised within 2 days of the open, and there was a whole bunch of crap and said their service was insecure when it was largely because there were 3 reasons why the folks got their Disney Plus accounts compromised. There were credential stealing Trojans on their machines. There were keystroke loggers on their machines, or credential stuffing.
Right.
And credential stuffing was the huge deal. Now NordVPN got nailed with credential stuffing, and now Ring. There's this thing on the national news about Ring having this, cameras compromised.
Well, yeah, basically on the dark web, they're touting tools which sound really lame, by the way, that are essentially credential stuffing or like just guessing basic passwords of people's accounts.
Exactly.
But when you're buying a tool like that on the dark web because you can't write it yourself, which is really actually pretty easy at a nominal skill level, but you buy it on the dark web, whoever wrote that tool, they're probably scraping all the passwords, right, and account information, and where it's valid, right, from you. And then, Lee, you had an article about kids' watches, right? So this is the time of year where anyone who makes a Wi-Fi or internet-connected toy for kids is coming under scrutiny as well.
Right. So there's these brands of watches, Dewey-Wom, Jazzby, Smart Turtle. They're sold by Amazon. And as I understand it, they're pretty much all made in the same factory. The only difference is what box they put it in. And they all have the same default password of 12134556. And you can exploit them to get location information and other crazy stuff out of the watch, which is bad enough for an adult focus. But this is focused for kids. That, to me, just makes it really kind of creepy. And Amazon has not decided to pull these. They probably sold a ton of them because they're cheap. But that just bugs me that they, something marketed at kids, they're not really looking at the security.
Yeah, there was an article we covered on Hack Naked News about VTech walkie-talkies and something else. It was basically Bluetooth vulnerabilities. Larry, I don't know if you saw that one.
I did not.
It was like basic Bluetooth vulnerabilities.
Classic or LE?
It looked like classic.
Oh, really? That's...
Yeah.
Okay.
And, by the way, these watches are partly marketed as tracking devices, so you can watch where your kids are. Which I understand the need for that. It doesn't mean I don't think it's creepy. That's just because I'm old. But I understand in today's climate, having a good idea where your kids are is really important. And they're under $40, so people are just going to pop for them without even thinking about the security because they're cool.
Yep.
I mean, at that point, you're almost better off giving your child a phone and just using tracking software on the phone and having some control over how their phone is configured and hardened, right?
You just don't let them out of your sight, or you lock them in a closet.
Well, I mean, there's different levels of that too. I mean, they're not in your sight when they go to school, right?
So
homeschool.
To that, the approach we've taken is our 12-year-old now has a phone. It's a hand-me-down old iPhone from the last time we upgraded, and she's super happy with it. And she takes it to school, which they're technically not allowed to have phones at school, but she leaves it in her backpack all day. And when she gets on the bus, she texts us and says, "I'm on my way home," or
but so our school says they can have them, but they can't have them on. But then I get a call from the school that's like, "Hey, your son didn't show up to school." I'm like, "Well, I dropped him off at the door, And then you call the school and they can't find them. And I'm like, well, I texted them. And they're like, oh, they're not supposed to have their phones on at school. I'm like, but you can't find him.
Yeah.
So I'm falling back to technology, which you say now my son is not allowed to use the school. Like, okay.
So we have the rules with her. Like, you're not allowed to have it at school, but put it in your backpack. When you get to the bus, you can have it. And like late bus, she today exactly. There's no sidewalks. There's snow on the road. It'd be dangerous for her to walk her home.
Right.
When you get off the late bus and you're at the corner, text us and we'll come pick you up. It's like a 1-minute drive. We don't want you walking on the street and with no sidewalks and that type
But it's the same thing. I picked my son up from wrestling. I'm like, oh, I've got a different car. I took a different car today.
This
so
is the car
look for this car today, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And those same sort of things. And what ended up happening was, so we have no technological controls to tell what she's doing on her phone. It's completely open. And the other day, she was up in her room doing homework, and I went up, knocked on her door, waited 2 seconds, opened the door, and she's watching videos on her iPhone while doing homework. And like, no, that's like watching TV doing your homework. You don't get shit done. So music or GTFO. Today, went up to her room, go to the podcast, knock, 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 wait 2 seconds, open the door. She's like digging at her phone, puts it face down on the desk, and it's still going. And I hear voices. And I'm like, what's the phone doing? She said, I'm listening to music like you told me to. Let me see it. And she picks it up, and she says, well, I just switched over to videos for a minute. And they're reading Christmas stories. And I'm like, great, you're doing videos. If I catch you doing that again, you lose the phone.
See, I went with Hadnagi's recommendation of Q Studio. One of the ones he recommended on the show when he came on. And again, taking his advice of just being open, like, dude, I'm monitoring your phone for your protection. We're gonna look at the logs together, basically, kind of thing. And that's been working out pretty well. And I tell you what, though, I use Circle and Q Studio and all those monitoring and protection tools. I'm not really truly happy with any of them, to be quite honest with you.
But my monitoring is interacting with my kids.
Yeah, I mean, we do that too.
And I know you guys do that, but many families out there don't. So, Paul, there's one of your stories in here that I really wanted
Look at us being all old now, being like, how are we going to monitor our kids?
I know. Like, shit. What, Sam,
Not an adult.
Yeah, Sam,
Right?
Sam just posted something in Slack that was, as a kid, you didn't realize. When you're a kid, you don't realize you're also watching your mom and dad grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true.
So true. Anyway,
So
one of my stories.
So one of your stories that really hits close to home, because I've been following this person for the amazingness that she is for many reasons, most of them her brains. And admittedly so, she does other things to flaunt other assets, as it were. Your story number 8, Shenzhen's homegrown cyborg.
Yeah, apparently this is an older story.
But either way, this is still something for Naomi Wu, otherwise known as Sexy Cyborg, that is very much a day-to-day type of thing. So
yeah, like she is using technology to modify her body.
Yep.
And what I thought was really strange cultural thing too is she wanted to make herself taller.
Yep.
And basically hack her body to be taller. And the Chinese government's like, yeah, no, there's a law, like you can't do that.
You can't break your shins and make yourself 2 inches taller by doing that, but you can
Which
get
I thought was just in that weird movie. There was a movie that did that. Anyways, old sci-fi movie. But
it's Gattaca.
Yeah, Gattaca. Thank you. You know exactly what else. It's almost like we've been doing this for 15 years. But so she's like, okay, well, I'll get a boob job and I'll wear really tall heels and modify my body in other ways, which I just thought was a weird way to think about hacking. But okay.
And many years ago, we talked about a story from Naomi that was the pen test heels that she made, 5-inch heels that were 3D printed and had a little cupboard in the side where she had hacking tools.
Right.
So she could flaunt her boobs and walk into an organization, pass a security guard with these heels on, and then do an implant. Like, that's amazing.
This sounds familiar, like we talked about it on a news segment sometime.
Paul and I have talked about it many years ago. The big thing is that because
Besides her boobs.
She exactly.
They're larger anyway.
She is very outspoken. She's very attractive. She does these amazing things with technology because of where she is in the technology sector in Shenzhen. That she receives a lot of flack. She is asked to be interviewed a lot of time, and many of the interviewees have effectively doxed her. And she's Chinese, and have doxed her about some of her views and her location, which are unpopular with the Chinese government, and she has been detained on numerous occasions.
Mm-hmm.
And is actually in fear of her life for the type of work that she is doing in China and I'm going to use the word hacker, and it may not be the type of hacker that you all think of.
No, but it embodies the spirit of hacking in its original form that we'll explore certainly on the 19th in multiple segments. But and it's her being detained and persecuted for this, I think, goes largely against what we're trying to accomplish in the hacker culture of making knowledge and information be free about various ways to hack, various vulnerabilities, and all of that sort. I thought another interesting point in this article, segue into Chinese Kung Fu, her shoes are called Wu Ying, which is translate to shadowless, which is the famous shadowless kick by famous Chinese martial arts folk hero Wang Fei Hung, which is actually in the martial arts that Wang Fei Hung practiced, called the shadowless kick, which is pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
I think, ironically enough, Wang Fei Hung used to defend the Chinese people because whoever were invading at the time was persecuting the Chinese people. They would send like dogs in to attack them, and he would use the shadowless kick to defend himself and the people of China in like defense of their freedom, right? Which is like, then fast forward to today,
right?
Totally opposite of what's happening.
Yep.
So
I think the big thing that I want everyone to draw from this story is that regardless of where you see Naomi Wu, Miss Wu, as a hacker, she's a hacker.
Yeah,
of any variety, and she's building amazing hardware, she's doing amazing things to both her body and
she's doing some cool stuff. She's got a picture of
and technology. And that she is currently being persecuted in China because
of it. Yeah.
Because of it.
And she's got a backpack that's a 3D printer. That's cool. Right?
She is hacking technology she's taking something that was never designed to do what it is doing and making something different. And that said, I think we should all support her, and I'd love to get her on the show for an alternative type hacking segment.
That'd be awesome.
And not freaking dox her.
Right.
And appreciate her for the person that she is and the amazing mind that she has, and acknowledge the perseverance that she goes through with an oppressive culture for information being free. So,
and
Lee,
I remember watching one of the videos she did on I think it was on those pen test heels she made.
I mean, this is years ago.
Right. And she knew what the hell she was talking about and what the heck she was doing. This is not some poser. This is somebody who really is learning what they're doing and taking it to a next level. It's really cool.
Yep. And absolutely, at the time, many folks said that she was a poser because she was a very attractive woman with big boobs. But that was a ploy to get her past, her argument was that it was a ploy to get her past that initial step of having this appearance to be very disarming.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. And
I'm sure works. She could do all kinds of physical pen tests, no slight intended. I mean, just the social engineering that she's this really smart lady that's very attractive.
Yep.
Be a hell of an asset trying to bypass barriers. It would be crazy.
Oh yeah. And an amazing person, regardless of her physical appearance, and the mind that goes along with with her is. I've been following Naomi since that shoe thing, and that was. Oh God, that was 10 years ago when
Was it?
3D. That was
It didn't
like
seem
when,
like it was that long ago.
when 3D printing first started coming out. When she had access to some of the first stuff there. And it may have been 8 years ago, but it feels like 10.
Yeah, I'm not challenging you on the timeline. It just seemed like it was just the other day. And it was. I know this.
Yeah, and the fact that she had the mindset to put that together, to build stuff, and it may not all have been in support of security, but it was a hack of life.
Yeah, she's some really cool 3D printing hacks. Like really knows her way around a 3D printer to do some really cool stuff.
One of the ones that I thought was amazing was she made this dress that had LEDs implemented in it, and that she could change the LEDs and spin around, and like it was this whole physical appearance thing which she was exploiting at the time, but the technology that went into that to build that was amazing and was well beyond the capabilities of what everybody else was doing, from like the Adafruit trinket and all of this wearable stuff at the time. So an amazing person. I highly suggest you check her out with an open mind, and realize her for the hacker that she is, and that she's being currently persecuted for her activities in China, and
It's horrible.
And she will, and from my understanding, she will never leave because she loves China and she loves where she is because she's got access to so much technology. So very much a dichotomy.
Can you imagine getting a tour of her lab, all the stuff she's created and done over the years that we haven't necessarily seen it all? What a hell of a collection. That would be awesome.
Sign me up and buy me a plane ticket.
Got it.
Jeff and Tyler, you've been quiet over there, guys. Any stories that are piquing your interest that we haven't covered yet?
AirDOS, please, AirDOS.
Oh, yeah. So this, I gotta classify this as highly annoying.
Yeah.
Research discovered that an attack can use AirDOS to infinitely spam all nearby iPhones and iPads with an airdrop pop-up.
Yep.
Dialog box keeps appearing on the screen regardless of how many times the user presses accept or decline buttons. I didn't research it like much further how you can. So attacks will continue even if the user locks or unlocks the device.
Yep.
I don't know. This is something that Apple just patched. I'm not sure there's other things you can do in the configure your phone to protect yourself.
You can't. It's a patch thing.
You have to turn it off to nothing.
Yep.
Basically.
Gotcha. So
even the contacts only allows prior to, I think it's iOS 13.3, unless it's off, it still allows it with the contacts only.
Unless you're running Android, and then of course there's the Java bug that could lead to a permanent denial of service on that platform as well. There's that.
But on an
Windows
airplane,
Phone
like
OS
how many
isn't an option anymore? I don't know what you do.
No.
You're screwed. How many times on a plane though do you see like this person's iPhone or iPhone, this Bluetooth is available, hotspot this, like AirDrop's available? Like you can literally walk through any major area and see AirDrop pretty much enabled on everything. The interesting thing about this though is not necessarily like kind of what they've done, because it's annoying, right? Like, yeah, you got a bunch of pop-ups, you're gonna have to figure out how to get into there, and they can apparently Siri can disable it, like by disabling your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi and or some kind of a manager that you can plug in if it's enabled. But thinking about something that they haven't done and implementing this maybe a little bit further is apparently Apple implemented a rate limiting thing where you can, after 3 declines, it basically blocks the subsequent requests from that device.
That's cool.
So what if you can spoof those requests for everybody in your contact list? And now you've essentially DDoSed everybody that is a legitimate user, and you can now no longer do AirDrop between particular devices. Like, how permanent is this? And how does this block and unblock happen? Where is the setting with inside of iOS to manage this?
Can you get, if there's a dialogue in iOS like that, can you do other things, or do you have to address that?
You have to address
box,
that. You have to address that.
You can't, like if that box is on the screen, you can't go disable Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or anything.
That's the DOS. You can't do any. If you're getting spammed with these AirDrops, you cannot do anything but respond to these airdrops. Accept or
So
decline. accept
if
or
you
decline.
had an RF shielding device that you could carry with you, then you could click
Yes.
the alert, right? And then go disable, put your phone in airplane mode, and then you're good.
So it says if once you're out of range of whatever device is doing that, right?
Yeah.
And my next question is based around that. Like, are there applications? Can you get this to do this to, say, like localhost? Can you do this to the device itself from the device? Like, how are
Right.
they implementing this proof of concept? So
And it's still
I think
just
there's
a DOS,
a lot of
though.
other stuff here.
Like, it's still just annoying, and it's a DOS, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the first part.
Now the other one, and I'm trying to remember the name of the project, and we were playing with this when I was teaching my last class for 617 in London. iPhones, if you have Bluetooth on, or iDevices have Bluetooth on, it
The Wi-Fi password.
it broadcasts BLE.
Mm.
And if you query those BLE devices because they use just works, so passcode of 0000 or 6 zeros rather, you can query a specific settings on the descriptors, services, and characteristics within Bluetooth Low Energy. And you can determine where the phone is in its state and what it's doing. And if you can, there's some other things. You can get some hashes, and you can pre-calculate those hashes and actually get the phone numbers of those devices from BLE, which is effectively unauthenticated because it uses default pins to communicate to the devices.
Well, there's some interesting things around like what they've done with iOS, and if you're within range and you're connecting to a access point that has someone already associated to that, and there's an iOS device that's associated and within range, it will ask the other person, do you want to share this password with X device they're trying to connect?
Yep.
You know,
And
whether or not you do that.
And that's independent of pairing mode. So earlier this week we covered the VTech, to answer your question, Larry, was the VTech's Kitty Gear walkie-talkie. When it boots up, it goes into pairing mode. And from a distance of 200 meters, you can pair to that device and take control of it and send audio to it. There was a singing machine, it was a karaoke machine that you could stream audio because the Bluetooth connection did not ask for authentication. So their implementation of Bluetooth didn't have the pin set for authentication. That's a
So
I guess it's up to you how you implement the standard, right?
Right. Well, so the question becomes: is it classic or low energy? If it's classic, they can set a service for mode 1, which does not require any authentication or encryption. And this was the Nokia 2032.
The soccer stadium hack.
The old Nokia 30.
Yeah.
That there were public services, mode 1 services that were public, that you can connect to the phone, no pairing, no pin, no nothing.
You know, because it's in your courseware. What was the message? It wasn't Josh. They sent the message right to everyone at the stadium. It's like one of the first occurrences of like a large scale Bluetooth hack.
worm.
But
we've dropped that from the course because it's become less and but the concept of that service still is valid.
Gotcha.
And I love teaching that course in London because one of those first attacks against an mode 1 service was actually in London.
It was in London at a soccer stadium.
No.
It was in Finland or Norway.
No, the first attack was in London, in King's Cross, where folks were rolling around King's Cross with a roller bag that were connecting to phones. The Nokia, the specific Nokia model that had the Bluetooth services available. The service was the serial port emulation, which was tied to the cellular modem. So you could connect to it without pairing to it, no pin, and you could issue AT commands, Hayes-style AT commands. ATDT 1900.
But don't forget,
So it makes a lot.
We may look at this as ridiculous, but when you're looking at a kid device, if you're marketing your device to children who are still just learning their numbers and letters, requiring them to enter numbers and letters could be problematic for your product, which is my guess as to why they might have excluded the authentication from this process. So,
and I will get you a list of that tool. Let's see.
I mean, there's always going to be some issues with tools. Again, we go back to the problem of creating an IoT device that has sophisticated enough technology to kind of wow the consumer for the particular time of year, that's created at the right price point with components that are going to do other things. Like, look back a couple of years, Hello Barbie. Like, you can make Hello Barbie say some things that, kids shouldn't hear. You say that with an app across multiple Hello Barbies unauthenticated, that's a big deal.
So Apple_BLEEE is the name of the project for the Bluetooth Low Energy, which will find advertising Apple devices and will give you a nice curses-based display, and it will tell you where they are. And it's not perfect, and I think the version I had wasn't completely updated, but it will tell you that you've got an Apple device and it's on the home screen, or you're in the settings app, and it's terrifying. And Tyler, I will get you a link.
Yeah, there's interesting things there, right? Because not only from things like that, you don't realize that even advertising links or JavaScript or WScript that's running in HTML pages, like, they have the ability to pool your battery levels, how long you were roaming on a particular page, how long it took you to scroll to the bottom if you were reading. Like, there's a whole bunch of metrics and statistics that advertising companies and or other companies use for things that I think would be rather interesting for nefarious purposes as well.
I wanted to talk about my story number 3. I didn't want to miss this one. Intel's SGX coughs up crypto keys by tweaking the CPU voltage. So subtly increasing or decreasing the current delivered to a CPU operation is known as overvolting or undervolting. A team of scientists figured out how to induce NGX faults that leak cryptographic keys, breaking integrity assurances and potentially induce memory errors that could lead to other types of attacks. Now, the article went through great lengths to say, well, an attacker needs to be on the machine with system or administrator level privileges to do this, but they also pointed out that that's given, that the CPU in these protected instruction sets is that's the attacker they're protecting against, right? They're trying to protect certain operations within the CPU. You can circumvent those controls, according to the research, by tweaking the CPU voltage. And from what the article said, with like very minimal processing, basically deduce the keys that are being used to protect things that are happening in these protected areas of the CPU.
That's super interesting. Like, from the standpoint of maybe not machines that you would be after that are super, super high value with inside of a corporate network, right? But you look at a lot of the PC building and PC enthusiast community, and there's a ton around overclock. I mean, for decades, we've been water cooling, overclocking our systems. We've got utilities on the device, third-party applications that will control real-time voltage to these CPUs for overclocking, and not only CPUs, but memory. And so the ability, and I think the potential abuse once code is released, to leverage some of these third-party applications, a motherboard, vendor, manufacturer applications that overclock these things live, that's when it could get kind of interesting. Again, most of what a machine that's going to have the ability to overclock from the OS with tools that are built in already there, like living off the land.
But this isn't,
that's going to be a different game, right?
But is clock speed and voltage two different things?
Yes. But they're both controlled via these tools. You always always have to get the voltage up past a certain point
to get the clock speed.
The CPU clock speed to that point.
I got
you.
I love the nerdy statement. The breakthrough leading to these attacks was the scientists' ability to use previous research into the undocumented model-specific register inside the x86 instruction set to abuse the dynamic voltage scaling interface that controls the amount of voltage used by a CPU. I don't know about you guys.
That?
I was mildly turned on by that statement.
Only
I mean, that's
mildly?
pretty cool.
That's
Right.
that's a $50 statement at least.
But
I want to know what that register is what I want.
right? That's the next logical question. I mean, it takes you back to early days of hacking, right? Where you looked for those undocumented instruction sets to achieve things that weren't supposed to be achieved, right? So bravo to this hack. To be honest with you,
Curious to kind of the level of sophistication and tooling it requires to do this, because obviously there's, you can monitor pinning, but you're basically talking about decapping and hitting multiple layers of a CPU under a super high intensity microscope while sending instruction sets in order to find a register on a CPU. Like, I can't think of any other way that you could potentially do that.
Insider.
Oh, I can.
Insider leak, perhaps.
Well, I mean, if you had schematics and you had complete chip design with like source code and instruction sets, and yeah, absolutely. But again, undocumented, that kind of alludes to the fact that maybe they don't want to get in trouble and reveal their source, and or maybe they found a way to look at that in an alternative manner.
Jeff, you still there? Sorry, you've been quiet.
I am still here.
Okay. I can't see you on my display right now. So
Yep.
Oh,
We can see John's screen that is no longer on the, but because we love Mark, we won't give him any shit for it.
and he's flying solo
well,
tonight.
I have a story that I wanted
Yeah.
to get your guys, especially Larry and Tyler's opinion on. Paul, you too. Lee, you too. And then
Which number, Jeff?
We all have our special.
which number, Jeff?
No worries.
Rather?
Jeff's my story number 1: Windows security review. There's better options, but not for the price. And basically, the article's a review of the native Windows security and how it's Microsoft is doing better. Just curious as to what your guys' take on that is. And then I have a question after you comment on that.
Better's probably an understatement, and honestly, like, as much crap as Microsoft has gotten over the years, like XP, we'll skip past that, but even hit Windows 7, how long the lifespan was, the pre-integrated AV that improved so much, and then the rollout to Windows 10 for free with kind of the progression of security with, Defender, with ATP, ATD. Like, Windows in and of itself, when secure, probably even by default out of the box, becomes a pretty decent target that we have to work with AMC to bypass. We have to work against Defender to bypass. We've got all this telemetry data that they're feeding into all the free versions and providing these rolling updates that are continually causing us to have to change and live off
Tyler,
the land.
what you're saying is that as a defender, I make the attackers' lives more miserable the more recent versions and iterations of the software that I'm on. If I'm the latest version of Windows 10, I'm on Azure, I'm O365, I'm in a much better position to defend against attacks versus older versions of the operating system. Look at the Outlook bug that we talked about, I think, last week, right? The more updated I can be in my Windows environment, the better off I am. Where attackers, I think, are still flourishing is people are on older Microsoft software that doesn't benefit from the protections that they're building into the most recent builds today.
I think
right?
I think it's a hybrid, but Tyler, he asked a question of you.
Also, you're looking at the market share, right? Like, you're still talking Windows, and you're still talking a bigger market share than any other platform.
Millions and millions of endpoints, right?
Yeah, and then you're looking at something. If you're not only leveraging those new platforms and keeping up to date, say you're not doing that, but you're leveraging all the free tools that they're providing and the free insights. So things like Sysmon, properly configured GPOs, even local security policies with Defender and AMC turned on. Like, you have all of the capability and visibility that you could possibly need in a very mature platform. And then you talk enterprise grade and you start to look at any of the ATP products and how they're incorporating that with Exchange and giving the visibility into Active Directory. And if you've got Active Directory configured right, with decent monitoring and some free tooling. Again, half of this stuff is free and included with either server or Windows 10 as either the client or the server side. Once done right, and people like adsecurity.org, Sean over there, and all the blogs and free resources that he's putting out, you could secure a network and have a very, very difficult and mature security client using nothing but Microsoft products.
Well, look at it this way. I mean, if you take a modern copy of Windows 10 and you don't do anything, you just install Windows 10, get it all up to date, and go try and install Metasploit. Let me know how that works out for you. Right? Like that ain't
try and download Nmap anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's taking a lot of those like table stakes things like basically off the table out of the gate. In that sense, in a very simplistic way, Microsoft is doing a very good job of doing that, and making attackers work a little harder.
Yep.
Right?
They've invested a lot of time and money into their reputation as a secure platform. And honestly, they do care, looking at a lot of the teams that are working over at Microsoft to provide not only the IR and kind of intelligence pieces that feed into the security platforms and how they're forward thinking with that. They really do care, and they want these organizations to be secure, because one of the things I learned about Microsoft from kind of an inside person was they eat their own dog food. Literally anything that they produce, they roll out and utilize internally for a substantial amount of time and continue to use as an enterprise product. And therefore it gets developed, it gets secured, and it gets done right moving forward.
Yep.
Jeff?
Tyler and Paul, you guys you're both kind of touching on my real question where I want to go with this, which is, so Windows 10, modern, updated, out of the box. Even Paul, you sort of referred to out of the box without doing much to it. But my real question is, from a classical looking at a Windows perspective, where you have to go through a hardening procedure. In the old days, there were so many things that you had to do just out of the box to get the thing ready to put online, if it was a workstation or a server. How comfortable are you with out of the box, quote unquote, these days for Windows 10? And or what are the things, and I think Tyler, you might have alluded to this and I forget the person's blog that you mentioned, but what are the things that you still need to do even beyond out of the box to basically set up a Windows 10 server? And just to put icing on the top of that, imagine that the system that you're building is going to be a point of sale system, a PCI system that is an endpoint, but it's an endpoint that's consumer facing and that's processing payment cards.
I'll just really quick, and then we'll turn over to Tyler, and I'm going to set you up nicely, Tyler. Right? So it used to be back in the day, took a Windows system and you had to build it in a sandbox because it had so many easily exploitable vulnerabilities that you couldn't even get through the build process, let alone the hardening process, before it was potentially compromised by a network worm. Today, that base level of security protects against a pretty good percentage of the malware and attacks that are out there today, right? Larry's agreeing with me, right? When you now look at going into a point-of-sale environment and defending against more advanced attackers, there are some things that you should do and probably must do, right, to defend against some of the more advanced attackers. But Microsoft has raised the bar. Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, the bar is definitely substantially higher. And out of the box, you are offered a lot of protection. This also is caveated by the fact that Microsoft wants to make this a user experience still. This is still an end-user OS for, say, Windows 10. And so you do have things enabled like a default firewall, especially with different profiles, public domain. When you start to talk about enterprise and or even home computers and getting some base level stuff, like you've already got AV installed, it's already up to date, it's already doing really advanced heuristics. Like that stuff's really good. Firewall's pretty decent. You can add some outbound capabilities there that I think add a ton of protection from an enterprise standpoint, host-to-host communication, wormable things. But really, there's only a handful of real good hardening pieces that you even have to consider from an enterprise standpoint to limit, some of the legacy stuff like NetBIOS or some of the LLM&R stuff, WPAD. Even those are on a lot of the enterprise devices as part of the build process, configured and with inside of a GPO that you've already set up for some of the older legacy systems to ensure your environment's secure.
So my additional caveat is no Active Directory. They're all standalone. Not that I have a customer that's using these things or anything right
now. So going further through that, like Microsoft has done a great job at providing deployment tools that allow you to set things that would be configured via GPO on a baseline system for standalone deployment. And take that a step further, there's additional controls for things that would be considered like a kiosk deployment or hostile environment deployment, where you're limiting and disabling USB devices, where you're very, very strictly limiting user interactions, and the ability to use whitelisting applications and AppGuard, and using the TPM with BitLocker. So if the hard drive walks off or the hardware itself walks off, like these things are so much less of a risk and so much easier to configure and manage.
And that's included.
Really, it's education.
That's included today. So yeah, BitLocker, AppGuard, right? You get that.
Yep.
With OS, you don't need a domain. You
and
almost open up.
That's based on the OS version, right? Like enterprise and professional, and there's certain caveats there. But for the most part, enterprise and Windows 10 in general includes all this by default.
And you almost open up more of an attack surface by having the directory services.
Is it included and enabled by default, or is it included? You still have to do a little bit of setup and tweaking just to tailor it.
There's a little bit of setup. There's some things that you could include by default, though. If you literally just put a VM on, ran it, and installed by default
the latest version of Windows 10, right?
Yeah. You're getting most of the AV, the Enterprise Guard, a lot of the firewall stuff. Those are all set by default. You're still semi-open by the ability to have a end user interaction that is not configured.
It'd be interesting to see someone do the research to say, like, basically, if I take the latest version of Windows 10 and get it all up to date, like where the bar is, like somehow measure that, and then say, as you add more of these controls, like how much security you gain.
I think,
is there research out there?
I think this ties back to the whole. We'd love to see what happens when you put an unpatched XP on the internet and how long it takes to get compromised
versus Windows 10
in this config. And then in this config,
and
this
config. I would take that to Windows 7 even, honestly. Like the difference between Windows 7 versus Windows 10, and even go a step further between, say, Windows 10 Anniversary 1603 and 1909. Like we're talking about a big difference. And
the big difference we covered in Hack Naked News, right? The big difference between 7 and 10 is 7 still uses Security Essentials, and after that they switched to Defender, which is far more advanced.
You're getting telemetry and feed-in data from all of the ATP products and a lot of the heuristics built into that. And then on top of that, you look at something like taking in Anniversary Edition and being able to baseline that against something like the attack framework. I think this research would not be that difficult to validate against a baseline install and call it the 80% of either automated ransomware or automated attacks that a low-level, unsophisticated attacker is going to use for compromise. And I think you would be at a pretty substantial amount. Like you can definitely
MITRE is in a great position to do that too, to make that recommendation, right? Yes. For your customers, Jeff, I would love to see MITRE say, look, if you're going to take Windows 10, get the latest version, configure it like this, you're in this percentage of coverage in the MITRE attack framework, and this is the state of the security of that system.
And I think Sean does that as part of his commercial stuff with Trimark.
So Sean Metcalf, adsecurity.org, which is the blog that Tyler referenced. Trimark is his commercial company, right? Is he correct? They're like Windows security, like massive.
That's Active Directory security, like to the X Max potential. Like
they are the experts
Active
in that
Directory.
field.
They are that.
Yeah. So whether it be MITRE or Trimark, I think that would be a hugely valuable metric for sales and or otherwise to set up a bunch of systems on the internet, publicly available, and quote, we'll click on every link sent to them via email and so forth. I mean, we do these types of things in 617 that, you send an email, you get an attachment, we open the attachment with Office. We run executables, you name it, and see how these systems respond at all these various patch levels and, all of the creators editions and what the time to live on the internet is. Much like we had with XP, like you drop an XP system fully patched on the internet, what's the time to live? I think that would be some very valuable metrics.
You know, it's interesting. Another carryover from Hack Naked, Panasonic is doing this with their IoT devices. They're taking their IoT devices, they're putting them up on the internet and monitoring them and seeing how they're attacked, and then feeding that back into their dev cycle to their developers to fix the issues and iterating. It'd be interesting for Microsoft to do that, right?
That'd be
and,
interesting.
And publish that research to say, this is what like our latest config in Windows 10 looks like when we put it out in our honeypot system, and then feed that back into their developers and make a better baseline.
You're never going to get surprised if they're not doing that,
right? But they're gonna. There's obviously going to be advanced attackers that, sure, you're going to need other security measures to protect against that. But I think the baseline is in a good spot now, but it can also be improved based on some of that research.
That would be amazing statistics to have from all of the major vendors for IoT. And just going on the TV side, like Sony, Philips, LG.
Right.
Like the FBI warned this week about the whole IoT thing.
Multiple times.
And like
I covered that.
So
it's kind of mediocre.
You buy a smart TV to be a smart TV, and they say disconnect it from the network and put a thing over the camera, even if it's disconnected. Like, then why did you buy a smart TV?
Was it last week I said I just want a TV?
Yeah.
Right.
I want
to choose my own device, right? I just want a TV.
Well, I want a TV that I can. So this was a thing that happened. We bought the new TV, when my wife was on vacation. This massive TV that she's like, no big TV, and then she started using the built-in apps, and like Netflix and Amazon and all the stuff, and I'm like, shit. I can't get Disney Plus to see The Mandalorian on my TV. And I get home from London and Disney vacation, and there's an app for Disney Plus on my TV.
Yeah, they're pushing features. Hopefully they're pushing security and bug fixes as well.
They're patching, they're updating this shit often.
And that's the real fix too, right? The FBI's recommendation of like don't connect it or cover the cameras, not, to your point, Larry, right? Not feasible. You want to use the device that you bought. So you want the hardware and software manufacturer to address those issues so it's more resilient, right?
Right.
That's basically what we're saying.
The big one for me was like, shit, I bought this TV and
I want to use it.
I'm done. I want to use it like a Fire Stick. Like, we'll never get Disney Plus on that. But no, the TV is manufactured.
I think Amazon did support. If they do, Amazon does support the Disney Plus app. But
you see what I'm saying? Like, I buy into this ecosystem, and I'm like, shit, they won't support this. But my TV was ecosystem independent, and I came home and I want to watch The Mandalorian. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Oh, there's an app on my TV, and it's already there, and it's already the latest version.
You just got to give it your credit card number? Anyway.
No, I signed up for that on my laptop.
Yeah, you do it on your laptop. That's true.
And I still have yet to watch The Mandalorian.
Oh, I was hoping to nerd out on The Mandalorian. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, obviously.
No,
but.
Soon. I think very, very soon, like this weekend.
I think very soon we need to end the show.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Okay.
Let's do it.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening and watching. That will round out Paul's Security Weekly for this week. Larry, take us out. Ooh.
I was going to give that honor to Tyler this week.
Ooh. Wow.
Tyler, you know what to say, right?
Over and out.